Does it have to be a butter? No, it could be cashews themselves, right? The idea here is we're talking nuts. I like nuts. What's up, Muscle and Strength? Evan Centopani here, back in my kitchen. I was asked to dissect my grocery haul to show you guys what I would consider the 3 best, or at least for me, my top 3 proteins, carbohydrates, and fat sources. Now, my selections are based on a couple criteria. Number 1, I'm looking for foods that are nutritious, right? We're not looking to consume empty calories, of course. Most of what I consume is single ingredient foods. I try to stay away from things that are processed or composed of too many ingredients. You know, when you turn a product around and you see a laundry list of ingredients, some of which you may not be able to pronounce, try to avoid that stuff. Also, digestibility. If it doesn't digest well for you, if you don't feel well eating it, if you notice that it has certain negative effects, then for you, it's not a great food. So when I'm going over these sources, these are sources that for me, they work well, they're palatable enough for me to consume regularly, week after week, month after month, year after year. And that's really the long and the short of it. So let's start with protein sources. What kind of bodybuilder would I be if I didn't include chicken? Now, I don't love chicken, but I don't mind it, okay? It's neutral. If I'm gonna prepare it in different recipes, which I don't, okay? The extent of my preparation entails me slapping one of these bad boys on a cutting board, butterflying it in half, and then bringing it to the grill to cook. Nope, I don't even season it. I don't care anymore. I've been there, I've tried all the seasonings, I'm sick of all of them. This is good chicken. You see the name here, Bell and Evans, all right? This is a point that I would like to impress upon you guys. And listen, I've eaten my share of $1.99 a pound chicken breast over the years. When I was younger, on a tight budget, yes, you gotta do what you gotta do. But I've been fortunate enough to be able to spend a little bit extra, but I'm gonna tell you right now, the taste and the texture of this stuff is phenomenal. Bell and Evans, if you're watching this, I'm your guy. So guys, do yourself a favor. If it fits your budget, do opt for something that's more enjoyable to consume. All right, this is ground turkey. It's 94% lean, which is not super lean. By comparison, if I was dieting really hard, they make 99% lean, which is just ground turkey breast, and that stuff is miserable. I've eaten my share of that over the years. It's just a nice way to mix it up. I usually have this at dinner. I put it over some rice. I have a salad on the side. Maybe I put a little hot sauce on top of it and call it a day. But I like it, okay? I enjoy it. It's not bad. I find it easier to digest. Beef for me gets a little bit heavy, so that's what I opt for. And of course, whole eggs. I absolutely love whole eggs. I think they're both a superfood and something that digests really, really well for a lot of people. And these are pasture raised eggs. Do you need to buy pasture raised eggs? No, but these cost around $4.50 per dozen. I think that's a tremendous value because once again, I was recently in a grocery store and I was looking at egg prices. And they're not really just for run-of-the-mill eggs. They were still $3 something a dozen. These got nice dark orange yolks. They're delicious. They don't look like those anemic pale yellow yolks that you may see in conventional eggs. Of all the eggs that you could consume, but pasture raised means the chickens were able to go outside and eat things that were more natural to a chicken's diet. And I believe it, right? Look, there's no way of knowing if any of this actually happens. But when I see these yolks that are nice, dark, orange, and they're delicious, I have to believe something happened there. Our next macronutrient, carbohydrates, has historically been the topic of much debate. I can speak, I think, to both ends of the spectrum. Carbohydrates, I do believe, have a value. Number one, they're a calorie source. Okay, so for an athlete who's looking to get as big and as strong as possible, fueling themselves solely with proteins and fats, I think would be a mistake. So to include carbohydrates in their diet is a no-brainer, because carbs are cheap, they're palatable, they provide calories, they provide energy. Why would you not consume them? Beyond that, even if we look to somebody who's dieting, are carbs necessary? Well, I do believe that they help to stoke the metabolism, right? So times when I've included carbohydrates in my diet, even if in cyclical fashion, I got in shape easier than when I excluded them altogether. That being said, I wanna show you guys my 3 top picks for carbs. Number 1, rice, right? What kind of bodybuilder would I be if rice was not on the list? Now, I like rice for several reasons. Number 1, it's extremely cost effective. This bag at 20 pounds cost me around 20 bucks. And I added it up recently, but there's like hundreds of servings in here. So it's extremely cost effective. It's very palatable. I love the taste of white rice, and it digests really, really well. I never get tired of it either. So rice, great carb source in my opinion. Unlike rice, right? Potato is not a grain. It's technically a vegetable. It's a root vegetable. And it actually is a very good source of micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, a lot of potassium in this bad boy. And it's, for some people, they find it more gentle on their digestive system. Maybe a little bit of fiber in here, but I like potatoes also. Easy to prepare, convenient, still cheap, right? A 5-pound bag of potato is only gonna cost you like $2, $2.50 for like good ones. So at 50 cents a pound, they're still very economical. So somebody might say, well, Evan, why a white potato when you could consume a sweet potato? Aren't sweet potatoes supposed to be better for you? Well, that's kind of one of those things where it's like brown rice versus white rice. Is a sweet potato intrinsically better than a white one? I don't believe so, but in the dieting process, oddly, I always felt drier and harder and less bloaty eating white potatoes. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer there, but yep, cheap, effective, tasty. And let me get my last carbohydrate selection. Good old oats. I don't know if it's occurred to any of you guys watching, but between oats, potatoes, and rice, there's one significant similarity in the fact that all 3 are gluten-free carb sources. Now, I'm not sitting here being one of those people that tell you gluten is bad, but I will tell you this. Consumed in significant quantities, like if I just got rid of this stuff and said, you know what, I'm gonna eat bread and pasta all day, I don't find the digestibility of it as efficient. I think that these 3 carb sources, they digest significantly better than gluten-containing carbohydrates. Again, not a great micronutrient source. I would never look at carbohydrates and say, you know what, I'm consuming these because they're just loaded with vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients and things that my body just cannot live without. I'm looking at carbohydrates as a calorie source, right? If I'm in an off season, I need calories. I like carbs, they're cheap, they're tasty, and pre-contest, same thing, but they also bolster my metabolism as well. So I'm gonna bring them in and out in cyclical fashion. So that's my take on carbohydrates, and that's how I come to the conclusion to make these 3 my primary selection when it comes to carbs. Next on the list, we've got fats. Now fats, I think, are probably one of the most underappreciated, misunderstood, undervalued macronutrients that we have, right? Because I grew up in the 80s. For anybody watching, grew up in a similar time period, fats were demonized, right? Well, it's fat. Fat makes you fat. Well, we've come to realize that there's a little bit more to the equation than that. And fats, especially for people who are, actively trying to grow muscle, build muscle, or even if you're just an athlete, right? Fats, well, they literally have more than double the amount of energy per gram compared to protein or carbohydrates. And fats have everything to do with muscle fullness. And for a lot of guys who are on the standard chicken and rice diets, okay, eating just carbs and proteins, very low fat, these guys don't grow the way that they should. And they love things like red meat and whole eggs. Oh, they're good growth foods. Yeah, dude, a lot of that's because of the fat content. So a lot of guys, once they finally get past this idea of fats being bad, and they bring up their fat intake in an off season, even pre-contest, oh man, the look of their physique changes dramatically and they feel a lot better too. Low fat diet, oh man, I feel like hell eating low fats. So I'm gonna give you guys my top 3 fat picks. Number 1, olive oil. All right, I use olive oil probably more than any other fat source in terms of a pure fat source. I'm gonna show you another one in a minute that is combined with something else. So it's not an isolated fat source. Olive oil, there's just fat in this, right? There's no carbohydrates, there's no protein. I love olive oil, not just because I'm Italian, but olive oil just burns easily. Okay, so whether you're off season, it's extremely valuable in an off season setting because it digests rapidly. Okay, it's not going to take up valuable real estate in your stomach. Pre-contest, okay, it's just as valuable because it burns rapidly, and there have been studies that show that olive oil consumption increases fat burning. I'm not gonna say you should sit here and guzzle the bottle, but as a fat source, I love olive oil. Next up, something I absolutely love, it's a real treat to consume, cashew butter. Now, it does not have to be cashew butter. It could be almond butter. It could be peanut butter. Does it have to be a butter? No, it could be cashews themselves, right? The idea here is we're talking nuts. I like nuts because, well, predominantly monounsaturated fat source. They're delicious, and it definitely helps to break up the monotony of a diet. I would not say that it digests as easily as something like olive oil, but when you're dieting, maybe a tablespoon or 2 of something like this on top of a meal when you need a fat source, definitely help to increase satiety. So earlier when I said it was not purely a fat source, whole eggs, of course they double as a protein source, but the fats in a whole egg, some of the best that you're gonna consume. The amount of nutrients that are in it between choline, lecithin, and a whole array of vitamins and minerals, whole eggs are just, I can't say enough good things about them. And also have been linked to increased ability of the body to burn fat, the consumption of whole eggs. So these are my primary fat sources. On a day-to-day basis, my fat that I consume in my diet comes from this. There's really no polyunsaturated fat consumption in this diet, which many people would point to and say, well, that's a good thing. But we do want to try to maintain a certain balance, right, of omega-6 and omega-3s. And of course, maybe there's a little bit of omega-3s in these eggs, but that's about it. So when it comes to omega-3s, I will supplement with a couple packs of animal omega each day. It definitely helps to balance it out, crank up the EPA and DHA, because that is important for helping to balance inflammation and a whole host of bodily functions that are crucial to us functioning at an optimal level. So don't sleep on omega-3s. So guys, this has been my 3, 3, and 3. As you can tell, I'm a simple man. I keep things pretty basic. Single ingredient foods, about as crazy as I get is some nut butter in my life. But you guys don't have to do anything complicated for it to work. And if I could impress anything upon you guys, everybody's individual. This is what works well for me. What works for you might be a little bit different. Don't adhere blindly to the advice of myself, some influencer, because they said, hey, this is what's good, that you have to eat that. Find what works well for you, stick to it, and get the results.